Hello and welcome to Moonface Designs. I'm going to be doing a series of short videos that will explain to a complete beginner how everything works in the world of fabric collage. Now the first thing you'll need is a pattern. So if you go to my website moonfacedesigns.co.uk, there you will find my patterns, all designed by me in 3 different categories. So there'll be a novice, intermediate and advanced. And within each of those categories you will get a level 1, 2 or 3. So obviously if you are a complete novice, then find my patterns that are novice at level 1, take a look and download. You might find there are a couple of novice patterns that are free, so that you can have a little taster and see how you get on. So this one here is an example of my level 1. As you can see, quite nice big pieces, nothing really too difficult. You might just find these little bits here slightly challenging. You don't have to cut those out in fabric if you don't want to. What you could do is cut the background shape out, and then you could draw those on with Inktense pencils or some kind of permanent marker if you wanted to. So that is one of my level 1s. I'm going to be sticking together a level 2. As you can see, the pieces are still quite big, but we have got a few more smaller pieces at the top. Now if you are a little bit intimidated by these quite small pieces, and some of them are fairly small, what you can do is, instead of doing all the separate little shapes, you could perhaps combine 2 or even 3 of them together. And then what I would do is I would look at my fabric placement guide and see what colours they were, and then I would choose the mid-range colour between them. So for instance, if you've got a dark, a medium and a light all next to each other, then I would just do the whole shape in, say, perhaps a medium. But you are the artist, you can do things however you like. My patterns are only here for a guide, as are my levels 1, 2 and 3. So you're in the driving seat. It'll be your pattern, you can do with whatever you like. So you've been to my website, you've downloaded, and I'm guessing you've got your 4 pieces of paper. What I'll do is I'll just show you what you're actually getting. So you get a front page, and that just tells you the name of the pattern. I'll turn it this way actually, and it will tell you that it's a novice and this one is a level 2. It will tell you how many pattern pieces that you're going to get and the approximate size of it when it's finished. I don't know why, but that seems to be back to front in there. Anyway, so you will also get some instructions, which will just help if you get stuck along the way, just to remind you. You will get your fabric placement guide, which is what I was talking about just now. You will get your value tone guide. Now basically that is just a black and white picture of your fabric placement guide. But as we move down the series of videos, I'll explain how that can be used once you start collaging. You will also get a finished collage. So here is a finished collage of the pattern that I've done, and hopefully that will just point you in the right direction. If you're a little bit stuck as to what to do, you can just take a quick look and see what I've done, and then you know, use that inspiration or not, whatever you like. You might get a thread painted version as well. That's not to say every single pattern would have one in it, but I'm hoping to add the thread painted part of it to the patterns as we go along. It's not a necessity within the pattern, it's just something that would be a nice little extra. So some have them, some don't, so don't be surprised if you don't see one. And then you just get your 4 pieces of your pattern. So that's kind of how it would arrive. Right, so I've designed it so that you will get a margin round each piece of the paper. Some of them have got guidelines, some of them haven't. Like this one here hasn't got guidelines along the bottom. Basically, you can see exactly where you need to cut it anyway. And the margins will vary. So this one is a very small margin there. So what you need to do is, what I do is I just put it down as to roughly how it's going to look. And then I think, right, okay, I am going to stick this top piece together like this. You can stick it together like this. You can do it like this. All the pieces are designed that however you want to stick them, whether it be that way, on there, under there, you can do it any way you like. So there's an overlap of the pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the top two pieces together. So I've already cut the margin there, and what we do is we just offer it up. As you can see, that shape there is the same as that shape there, and you just sit it over the top. Now you could use a light box. That will help you see the pattern pieces very clearly and enable you to put them together really easily. The reason I'm not using a light box is that I think when you're starting out, you probably haven't got one. And to be perfectly frank with you, it's not a necessity. So I'm doing it this way because I would assume this is the way most people would do it. And I have to say, I have a light box. It's in its box and I don't use it very often at all. There's another way you could place your piece of paper up against the window, and when the light comes through, that is another way that you could do it. When I've got it roughly where I think it should be, and it is worth taking your time to do this, to line it up as best you can, because if you have it out of alignment when you do this one, that will have an impact on everything else that you add on afterwards. I then stick it with this sellotape. It is just a sellotape that you can write on. And the reason I like to use this is that when you stick it down, if you then decide, oh, that's moved or whatever, it is quite easy for it to come up, and you can take your sheet apart again without damaging it too much. So that's why I like to use that sellotape. So that's your first piece. We'll just put that to one side for a minute. Again, I've cut this margin off. I just think it's quicker. So then again, we just offer it up again. There we go, something like that. So that bit there is okay. So I'm going to stick a pin in that bit, and then that'll just allow me to twizzle this backwards and forwards just a little bit until I get it in a position where I'm happy. And I think that's about right. So we'll stick that piece, take the pin out. Okay, you could belt and brace it and turn it over and stick it on that side as well if you wanted to. I'm not going to bother to do that, and I generally don't. So now these two pieces go together, and as you can see, we've got a margin. So I'm just going to cut this top one, and when you cut yours off, what I suggest you do is cut a tiny piece of the pattern with it. And the reason I suggest that is because if you don't, you might just as well leave the margin and try and offer it up properly, and you can't see it. So I don't know if you can see that really, but it's got a tiny piece of the pattern on it. So that's how I would suggest to do it. So again, offer this piece up on top. I'm going to have to turn it this way, I can't see upside down. I think it's something like that, isn't it? There we go. So there we go. That's your pattern. Now we are ready now to add parchment paper. We use parchment paper to build your collage onto, and I'll explain how and why we use that in a future video. So I've managed to find some parchment paper that is 450 millimeters wide. I think the general stuff that you can get is about 300. Anyway, so luckily enough, this will sit over the whole of the pattern. If you have parchment paper that isn't as wide, what you need to do is just put 2 pieces of parchment paper on and have an overlap. So let's just assume, let me have that, let me just assume. So it doesn't matter whether your overlap is that length, that width, or that much. It really doesn't matter. It's probably better to keep it to about 1 inch. And you can see through 2 pieces of parchment paper where your pattern is. So it's not a problem that you've got them layered up. And you will find that as you buy the more complex patterns, there are some that are quite big, and you will most definitely have layers. So it's nothing to worry about. Okay, so what I like to do when I've done that is I like to put a staple in it. And the reason I staple it is because in the past I've had scenarios where it's actually moved and then I can't line it up again. So I've wasted a whole lot of time doing a collage, and I just had to take it all to pieces again and start again. It is quite difficult to collage over staples when you're doing a background, but I will explain a little bit more about that, and there's ways around it anyway when we get to it. So there you go, that's your pattern, and now we're ready to move on to the next stage. So in the next video I will show you how to prepare your fabric. What you need to do is take a look at your pattern, decide what colours you need, make sure you've got enough variety within those colours, and then I'll show you how to prepare the back of them. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and take care for now, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.